per hour. The weapon punched through 15 feet of reinforced concrete, then 10 feet of packed earth, and finally the steel-reinforced ceiling of the subterranean missile assembly floor. The millisecond delay fuse waited. Ignition. The initial blast wave expanded at 25,000 feet per second, instantly vaporizing the storage racks of ballistic missiles and solid rocket fuel. A chain reaction of secondary explosions followed, each one larger than the last, until the entire facility turned into a subterranean volcano. The earth buckled. A column of fire and debris breached the surface, turning the night sky orange for 10 miles in every direction. At that exact moment, 22,000 miles overhead, even civilian assets like the Meteosat 12 weather satellite registered the massive thermal bloom as the fires breached the surface. The Isfahan base was no longer a military installation, it was a 2,000-degree crater. The weapon of choice was the 2,000-pound bunker buster bomb. A 2,000-pound munition is not just a heavy object, it is a kinetic drill. When released from a high-altitude strike platform, it converts gravitational potential energy into a terrifying downward velocity. Think of it like a fist punching through drywall, but on a scale that defies standard architectural logic. These bombs are encased in a hardened steel alloy designed to survive the initial impact with 20 feet of reinforced concrete or 50 feet of packed earth. The fuse is the brain of the operation. It is programmed with a millisecond delay timer. It doesn't explode when it hits the roof. It waits until it has punched through the ceiling, through the floor of the second sublevel, and finally into the heart of the ammunition storage. When the 2,000-pound bunker buster bomb finally detonated inside the Isfahan depot, it triggered a chain reaction. The fires turned the night sky orange for miles. It was the Iranian regime's own stockpiles of ballistic missiles and rocket fuel providing the fuel for their own destruction. The blast was so powerful it shook the ground in Isfahan, a physical reminder that the sequence of the kill chain had been executed with mathematical perfection. If you've ever sat in the blue light of a CIC console at 3 a.m. while the rest of the world slept, or if you're currently watching these same radar tracks from a base we aren't allowed to name, you know, this isn't just a headline, it's your Tuesday. My grandfather used to say the hardest part of the watch wasn't the incoming fire, it was the quiet between the pings. If you've got a story about that specific kind of quiet, or if you've got family out there holding the line, right now tell us about it in the comments. We're all in this together. A new and far more dangerous timeline began to accelerate. The Iranian command structure attempted to reset the entire engagement through a massive two-wave retaliatory strike. This was a rational, lethal attempt to find a logic gap in the most advanced air defense network on the planet. Thermal signatures began blooming across the Iranian interior as they initiated a synchronized launch of heavy ballistic missile batteries. These projectiles were launched from mobile platforms hidden in the rugged interior, designed to climb to the edge of space before screaming back into the atmosphere towards central Israel at several times the speed of sound. The Iranian strategy was one of saturation. They understood that a single ballistic missile is a high-visibility target for a professional kill chain, so they changed the math to try and stall the diplomatic window currently closing on them. The first wave was designed to draw fire-forcing defensive batteries to commit their interceptors and saturate their signal processing capacity. Then came the second wave, and with it a tactical shift that targeted the heart of the Israeli defense. The regime transitioned to cluster munitions. Think of a standard warhead like a single heavy sledgehammer. A ballistic missile equipped with cluster munitions functions like a shotgun blast delivered from the stratosphere. At a precise altitude over Tel Aviv and Petah Tikva, the main missile casings ruptured, releasing hundreds of sub-munitions across the sky. For the radar operators on the ground, the target list didn't just grow, it exploded. Instead of tracking 10 incoming warheads, the computers were suddenly forced to assign a solution to 1,000 smaller lethal objects falling at terminal velocity. In the streets of Petah Tikva, the air filled with the rapid-fire staccato of hundreds of small, sharp detonations, shredding civilian vehicles and turning city blocks into active shrapnel zones. The regime was betting that this chaos would buy them enough time to force a pause in the pressure campaign, but in reality, every missile launched was a finite resource they could no longer replace. While the missiles were falling over Tel Aviv, the second timeline, the U.S. tactical countdown, was being fed by an invisible stream of data. The success of the Isfahan strike wasn't just about the 2,000-pound bunker buster bomb, it was about the fact that the Iranian regime was being watched in real time by assets they couldn't touch. The imagery from the Meteosat-12 weather satellite confirmed the massive scale of the secondary explosions breaching the surface, providing a public record that their subterranean defense doctrine had failed. By allowing the regime to see that we could track their internal movements through non-military weather satellites, we forced them into a state of tactical paranoia. Every move they made to secure their remaining ballistic missile batteries only served to highlight them on our sensors. We didn't need to bomb every square inch of their bases. We only needed to hit the nodes where the sequence of their defense was most vulnerable. By showing the world the orange sky over Isfahan, the US was signaling that the diplomatic window wasn't just a suggestion, it was a countdown to a much larger kinetic phase that the regime was ill-prepared to handle. This tension between the two timelines was most visible on the ground in southern Lebanon. While the diplomatic offer sat on the table in Washington, the tactical fuse was burning through the Hezbollah proxy network. The IDF expanded ground operations into the thick brush and rocky terrain of the border regions, moving to systematically dismantle the tunnel networks and weapons caches that supply the regime's northern front. The IDF announced the loss of 4 more soldiers in a single 24-hour window, bringing the total killed in this phase of operations to 10. These were young men like 19-year-old Liran Ben Zion, whose funeral in Holon became a flashpoint for the national grief. In the mountains of Lebanon, the underdog opponent was using the terrain to land genuine blows, but their resistance was happening in a vacuum. For every Hezbollah cell neutralized, the regime in Tehran was watching the clock run out on their regional influence. The tactical reality was simple. The US and Israel were clearing the board of proxies before the final ultimatum was delivered to the masters in Tehran. The White House has now remapped the entire theater of Operation Epic Fury by introducing a psychological weapon that serves as the final bell of the diplomatic window. President Trump's public description of the US military presence as a lovely stay is a calculated tactical pivot. It treats the current application of force as a mere prelude to a much more catastrophic event. The ultimatum is about the total deconstruction of the Iranian state's ability to function. If the regime refuses to reach a deal and fails to immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the US is prepared to conclude its stay by obliterating the entirety of the Iranian energy infrastructure. This isn't just rhetoric, it is a target list. We are talking about every major electric generating plant in the country being prepared for kinetic engagement. The threat extends to the desalination plants that provide the only viable water source for millions and the massive oil processing facilities on Karg Island. Karg Island is the regime's economic jugular. It processes 90% of their oil exports. By identifying these assets as purposefully not yet touched, the US is forcing the Iranian leadership to realize that their current ballistic missile volleys are a drop in the ocean compared to what happens when the lights go out permanently. The price of winning is being laid out in cold financial terms. The regime can choose the golden opportunity of a deal, or they can watch their entire national infrastructure be reduced to a memory. This is the moment where the two timelines converge, the point where the diplomatic offer is removed and the tactical hammer falls. The final trigger for this tactical countdown is the Strait of Hormuz. For decades, the Iranian regime has used this maritime choke point as their ultimate shield, believing they could hold the global energy supply hostage to stop US actions. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has countered this